And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Rasta, along with my partners here on Sunday. We call this show the Mastermind here on LIBRadio, LIBTV, and livinginblack.com. We get together and we look at what is happening in the world around us. And we put our research and analysis glasses on so we can give you, our listening audience, a good idea of what you can expect to be happening in the world all around you. Today's date is Sunday, the 17th of May, year 2026 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6266 in the calendar of ancient Kemet, to which we've realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the seventh millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIBRadio, LIBTV, here on livinginblack.com. And we are live and direct. Looking forward to today's conversation. First of all, let me just welcome into the conversation your brother, our brother, is joining us in the house. Brother Duara, we have you with us. You can hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly fine, Baba. Shikamoni, Ubuntu Ma'at to the global LIB radio. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure, absolutely a pleasure to be with you today. I don't recall hearing anything that Baba Junious would not be with us, so he's probably be just plugging in his studio for right now, and I will see him when he does get into the show. How things been going with yourself?
Things have been extremely busy. Everything's good. I, like you, try to be an optimist and very solution oriented. And so I like to tell people many pots, many burners, many stoves. Just trying to juggle it all in this chaotic society and trying to keep the inner peace at the same time, which is a huge component of holistic health and wellness.
That is very, very true. And keeping the inner peace in a world that is unfortunately increasingly chaotic is going to be a challenge. And it's according to my analysis, and I'm really deep into this game theory of analyzing everything from the point that it's all tactical, it's all strategic.
Yes,
It's going to get much worse.
yes.
There appears to be a setup, numerous setups happening right now
Hmm.
that they're setting us up for a extremely disruptive catastrophic event. That's the word I'm looking for, catastrophic event.
Hmm.
It could be they're now talking about a new virus. We're seeing a lot of talk about hantavirus, and hantavirus is not necessarily new, but the new level of propaganda and talk about it. I heard just briefly, it was in the background as I was waking up doing my calisthenics. I heard that the Democratic Republic of the Congo
Yes,
is now perceived to be a new harbinger of this hantavirus.
yes. And Ebola, they are really trying to push Ebola again from Congo.
Yeah, Ebola may be the most frightening word in to those who believe in it. Um,
Exactly.
in the lexicon of communicable diseases, and when you consider Ebola said to evolve from, I don't know, monkeys, and and Ebola said to evolve in the Congo. We do know that's not true, but they say what they say, and we strike back. Ebola evokes a certain amount of fear. If you walk up to someone and you say, I have Ebola, they will look at you and say, either that's not funny, or they will turn around and get as far away from you as possible. But now, attaching Ebola in people's conscious minds
Yes,
to the idea of this hantavirus, which
yes.
is not necessarily deadly. So,
No,
what do
it's
you what do you see is happening, Baba?
and also to my understanding, hantavirus. one is an extremely rare disease, and
Mm-hmm.
there are a couple of different strains. The Andean strain is the most prolific in terms of its ability to do maximum harm. I guess you could say. I guess most people, if they do die from it, it's the Andean strain. But the more concerning thing is that hantavirus is not a communicable disease. It doesn't transfer from human to human, and if it does, it is only that Andean strain, and it is very hard to do, meaning there has to be an exchanging of body fluids in order for transmission human to human to even remotely occur. So
Mm-hmm.
what we're seeing in the background, though, is that Moderna and a couple of other pharmaceutical companies have, since 2018, tried to create a injection or a vaccine for hantavirus. And when you all said and done, there is literature out there that hantavirus has been used in gain of function research to make it more virulent. And so didn't CV-19 have this big thing in the beginning about a cruise ship being docked? I think it was off the
That's right.
coast of California. So now this thing in Spain with this cruise ship, their playbook, as Baba Juniors always reminds us, is very, very thin.
That's right. We have been joined by our resident genius, Baba Junius. And greetings, first of all, greetings to you, Baba Junius. Welcome to the show today. I hope you're in wonderful spirits.
I am, and thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here.
You put out something on your Substack page about your investigation into this hantavirus. Would you care to comment on what we are now seeing being stirred up for public attention?
Well, Duara pretty much laid everything out. What I want
Mm-hmm.
people to look at is that at when I wrote that, there was only 11 confirmed cases. I think there were like 3 initial deaths, and
Mm.
2 more died, and then there was 8 other people who suspected to have it. Stop and think about this. There are 9 billion people on this planet. So why
Mm-hmm.
is the mainstream media, why is the corporatist media doing the same thing they did with COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Remember and see, I'm sure that we're going to get to the Ebola situation
Mm-hmm.
later. We're seeing the same MO, the same play out, only this time the World Health Organization is claiming a global health emergency for Ebola, where they didn't do that for the hantavirus. There's all this hoopla. It's all hype and hysteria mongering, chicken little, the sky is falling.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the World Health Organization, who has lost much of its credibility, as far as I'm concerned, because of their the way they handled the the SARS-CoV-2
Mm-hmm.
COVID scam.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this mixed message, and from my perspective, they're trying to make us schizophrenic. On one
Mm.
hand, there's everything, the sky is falling, we got this, the hunter virus, it's lethal, it's this, it's that, and it has the same symptoms as a cold or flu. It's a respiratory thing. Then on the other side, oh well, hey, no, let's wait a while. But again, as Duara said, behind the scenes, they're developing concoctions supposedly to treat this thing that basically is very extremely rare,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
even though it is lethal. Now, he mentioned Moderna. We need our listeners and our viewers to understand that prior to COVID, Moderna had been in business for 10 years. They had never had a product patented, approved for distribution in their 10-year history. They
Mm.
linked up with some other companies, and they were able to get these approvals, and all these approvals come with immunity for a modality that when you do the research, if it hasn't been thoroughly scrubbed from the internet, mRNA treatment was originally designed for cancer,
Mm-hmm.
but they had problems with it because the laboratory animals kept dying in large numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They were willing to sacrifice it. Well, it was only 10% of them died. Well, that's we'll push. But the lab animals started dying in high numbers, so they shelved it until conveniently this global health emergency emerged, and they just rolled that out, and they used all of that to do some pretty foul and nefarious things. And I suspect that in conjunction with the Ebola and this hantavirus, you're going to see more and more calls for mandatory vaccines. You're going to see more calls for mandatory tracking, which they're doing now with this hantavirus.
Mhm.
You're going to see more calls for a globalized effort to be aware of future pandemics, which they've been doing since 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
They've had at least almost a dozen simulations prior to COVID. Uh,
Mm. So as we look into the details and we game this out, it appears that they're doing what's called a repeated game on us. That they're using the same MO, just change a few names, but they run it repeatedly. They could not do so without participation by a largely inactive target population, and the ramifications of all of this are really, really horrible. That these people are so arrogant. I'm almost tempted to cuss, but I don't cuss. I'm proud of the fact that I'm Kemetic priest and I do not cuss. But
Mhm.
they are so miserable inside of their presence amongst us all. And this is a tiny, tiny percentage of the people manipulating it all. But I tell you, even if we look across the medical field, they're either collaborators or they're just dang ignorant. And if you can recall the debate, I hope you got a chance to see the debate that I had with a California epidemiologist who was out here in the black community telling us to collaborate, cooperate with a COVID mandate.
Mhm.
Um, she was woefully ignorant and a willfully collaborator to the point that when I exposed her ignorance, she went left wing and started defending Margaret Sanger and accusing me of hating black women because I despise Margaret Sanger. Baba, brother Duara, I hear you in the background. Sounds like you got something to contribute to this.
Well, it is just that when you don't know who you are or where you
Mm-hmm.
come from,
Mm-hmm.
then you are going to be beholden by your captors, by your colonizers, in thinking that they are your savior. And that is part of the menticide that Baba Junious always reminds us of, that very powerful word given to us by Dr. Bobby Wright. Menticide, the killing of the mind. And as I've said before, Asa Hilliard was quoted as saying, "The mind is gone and only a zombie remains." This is the importance of knowing who we are. And I don't want to simplify it just I don't want to reduce it down to just, oh, obtain self knowledge. But I'm also seeing Baba Junius' shirt that says, know thyself, I think. And
Yeah, with the eye of Heru on his chest, right over
exactly.
your heart.
There you go. And so that's what I'm talking about. But breaking that down a little bit further, what I mean by that is knowing your history, is being conscious of the fact, which we talk about every week, that our ancestors for the past 10,000 years had come up with every solution to every problem and had an answer for every question that any human being had ever thought to ponder upon. And so I say all that to say that we must do a better job at decolonizing our minds and re-Africanizing them on the other end. And that is a large part of game theory, because from
That's
their
right.
perspective, game theory is how do we divorce African people from
Mm-hmm.
their history, from their original culture, from their traditional ways, in such a way that they will just latch on hook, line, and sinker to the technology and the flashy things that we roll out next.
Yeah, good point. Let me say greetings to our listening audience. Joining us in the house today, we say greetings to you for Africa One, Hotep Mastermind Panel, and Global LIB Family, Ubuntu. Nguvu is in the house. He says Sawubona, and we welcome you, both of you. Sawubona, I see you, and Ubuntu meaning I am, because we are. And there is so much to unwind here, and I love game theory. I'm just finishing up the book. I thought I had it finished, but then I forgot. I forgot to add the index to one of the most important chapters of the book. So I'd actually had sent it to the printer, and then I have to go and do it again today. So I'm going to finish that book today. It's going to be, it will be the largest book I've ever published, and it's a lot of work. And I've been a little bit disconnected from resources and research that I normally would have, but we we do the best we can with what we got.
Mhm.
Always looking for more, better tools so that we can do more, better for the people that we really, truly do care about. So, to the best of my ability, the game theory book will be a masterpiece.
Mhm. Mhm. I'll say.
One of the things I want to tie in, we talk about how their playbook is thin.
Mm-hmm.
Now they use the same MOs over and over again, mainly because they work, they're successful. And even when they're unsuccessful, they dust them off, they revise them, and they try them again. And so, what
Mhm.
we're seeing in this biomedical and psychological operation is very similar to what they do on the economic sphere. Keidi talked about the boom bust cycles that are created by insiders. They use situations to manipulate people's greed, people's ignorance of how the system works or how they control the system, or how easily it is for them to manipulate the system. So they have these extreme highs and lows,
Mm-hmm.
and they profit when they pull the plug. You know, the pump and dump systems, the rug pulling out, the Lucy, tricks Charlie Brown over and over again about the
Mm-hmm.
football. And so part of the menticide is to program us to have short memories, short attention spans. And using that enables them to control the breadth and depth of our understanding or our understanding of what's going on, or our sense of reality. And so they're
Mm-hmm.
constantly manipulating that. And so when you talk about game theory is basically pattern recognition, identifying the players, seeing beyond the veil and the okey doke and propaganda to see who are the players, who are the prime
Mm-hmm.
players. And we have to look at the prime players and what is their agenda, and look at what their patterns and their history has been. So for Black
Mm-hmm.
people to voluntarily engage in amnesia, hoping that
Yeah.
oh wow, white folks they've changed their ways of doing things. No, they haven't. They've
Mm-hmm.
just manipulated us so we don't see the patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
their rulership, those who rule over them, are just as vicious to their own people. And I tell folks, if they were successful in making us all disappear, killing us all off, they would dog out the remaining population of Europeans, just like they dogged them out in all of their history, whether it was the Middle Ages, whether it was when they were in Eurasia, living in the caves, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They hate them just as much as they hate everybody else. They just hate us because they're jealous of us.
Yeah, because we have the insight, we have the key to the room full of treasures that they want. These are the same people who went to the Nile Valley, dug up every tomb,
Mm-hmm.
eternal residence that the pharaohs and all of the chief architects of that great society had, and they plundered it, sent it to secret museums and people's homes. They plundered it. I'm a little bit lost for words because it's such a crime against humanity. And even to this date, we are still attempting to retrieve the artifacts from 5,000 years ago. But the thing is this: should we come up with a strategic plan to retrieve what is current on the planet and what is the future of the planet? Retrieve the green economy, which is in the mineral resources in Africa. The Congo has 70% of the world's cobalt. This green economy will not go forward without the Democratic Republic of the Congo's cobalt. Manganese, 48%. Platinum group metals, 90% of the platinum group metals from Africa. Aluminum. When we think about what we could do once we get our identity back,
Mm-hmm.
Brother Duara,
Mm-hmm.
then we would be able to restore the planet to
Yes.
order, to Ma'at. That's all in the plan that
Yes.
I'm trying to put together. Ma'at, and ooh, it gets so deep. This week, I don't know if you got a chance to follow it. I think, Junious, you knew about it. But we looked at the background of the AI community, this community developing AI and AGI, along with their leaders, and we found out there was an occult
Mm.
foundation to it all. We
Mm.
found things like sigils. Sigils are the ancient sacred cosmological or iconography that we had created in the
Mm-hmm.
Nile Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the new computer tech people have their own set, and they don't even begin to resemble ours. The commercialized people, they'll use ours, like the Eye of Heru, they're over Brother Junius's heart.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to use those symbols to commercialize, etc.
Right.
So, African people, bottom line, you have to recover your identity. You've got to own up to the fact that we have been terribly negligent toward our mother continent.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got to strategize of how to go forward, not go backwards, Sankofa ourselves and go forward using what made us strong and resilient all along. Now,
Dale
first of
Jones.
all, if you don't mind, before you mention Del Jones, I'm glad you're bringing up his name. Let me say greetings to more family members joining us. Nguvu for Africa One joined us real early. Brother Moja 210, that's Brother Daoudi from East Africa, or from West Africa in Ghana. He says, greetings, LIB family. Akwaba, much respect. My brother Juma is in the house. Hotep brothers, glad to be with you guys today. We're glad to have you with us, Brother Juma. And Queen Mother Koshiba is back in the family today. Hotep comrades, I am back. I had a hard time finding you online though. Well, we haven't gone anywhere, but you can always see the link to today's program. Every day I post up a program link to what we're doing on my Facebook page. So you and I, we are connected via Facebook, and we're going to do the best we can to make sure that everyone gets informed. And lastly, Queen Mother Kashiba and For Africa One says, Hotep Queen, so good to have your upful energy back again. Yes, yes, I completely agree. We welcome you, beloved Queen Mother. But Junious, you were mentioning Del Jones' name.
Right. Del Jones wrote and self-published a series of books around the theme culture bandits.
Mm-hmm.
And he also talked about the medical
The
army,
invasion of the body
the
snatchers.
invasion of the body snatchers.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about culture banditry and how they expropriate our culture, they turn it around, they pervert it, twist it. Look, when you type in Ubuntu on your browser,
Mm.
ancient African cosmology is not the first thing that comes up.
Right, right.
First things that come up are this company, this software company, or these people who are engaged in AI type technology, and they call it Ubuntu. That's the type of culture banditry that Dell was referring to, and Keidi
Mm-hmm.
talked about how it's the polar opposite. So from
Mm-hmm.
our perspective, we have Ubuntu and Ma'at. They have Isfit and just wickedness. That's the only way that I can cover it. And the sooner we grasp that and make that a staple in our game theory, because not only does game theory look at what people do, game theory attempts to ascertain what their motives are.
Mm-hmm. And what moves they can be expected to continue
Right.
making
Right.
and how to counteract that. That's the real reason I'm teaching this. It's a counter strategy field of active engagement. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, game theory, from our perspective, is pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Once you understand human beings and groups are creatures of habit, and then you begin to look at what they've done, you ascertain the damages or the pluses and minuses, pros and cons of what they've done. You can predict future activities, just like we know that they're going to continue to come up with these bogus uh,
Pandemics.
pandemic and scams, or they're going to continue to manipulate the financial system.
Mm-hmm.
So once we know that, once we can see that in those patterns, it's almost like, a wave or a sign. You know what they're going to do. We can prepare, and once we become really proficient, we can manipulate them and trick them and throw them off of their game.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, okay, we know what they're doing, we know how they do it, so we can do certain things to throw them off their game.
In game theory, many people, when I begin to look at game theory, they immediately the mind goes to chess. It's kind of like chess, but that's the name of one of my chapters in the book. It's kind of like chess, but
Mm-hmm.
as sophisticated as chess is, and if you can recall in Star Trek, I think it was Spock was playing chess on two levels. Game theory is like chess, but it's played simultaneously on four levels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to take a paradigm shift in our minds as we go to engage them where we can defeat them. We actually can defeat them, but we're not going to defeat them by my just writing and publishing a book. Enough people have to read the book, then collaborate, cooperate, and start to change the paradigm. These paradigm shifts are going to begin to give us enough leverage that we can have our confidence back. Confidence comes with that identity you talked about, Brother Duara. And if we look at where is our identity, where's our confidence, we could go look at the greatest leader in recorded history, Ramses the Great, or Ramses II. We could look at 5,000 years of Kemetic centered hierarchical leadership of us around the world.
Hmm.
We could look at Ma'at, the 42 positive affirmations of Ma'at. There are so many places we could look. We could just look at over 1,000 sacred iconography that we had used in ruling this 5,000 year leadership on this planet. So we have a lot of advantages. Where do we start?
We have to start with ourselves.
Mm.
You always talk about the importance of good health. You can't be a warrior, you can't be a healer, you cannot be a teacher in the truest sense if you're not well.
Right.
And one of the things we ignore with all this stuff with the Uruguayan medicine is our own immune systems, which is our internal God force, our
Mm.
internal energy, and understand why Africans focused on vitality and
Hmm.
vitalism was so important in African culture and cosmology. So, on the micro level, the greatest thing we can do is ensure our health, the totality and the holistic health, meaning our spiritual health, our psychological health, our emotional health, as well as our physical health.
Mm-hmm.
Once we do that and we encourage our immediate environment to do that, we will come up with ways and we will readjust our culture to maintain that homeostasis, that equilibrium, that natural vitality that's so important for us to navigate this world. So
Mm-hmm.
the main thing is, the whole say, physician, heal thyself.
Mm-hmm.
That perfectly dovetails as to what I was going to put on the table. Adding on to what Baba Junious just so eloquently stated, I would say also self-reliance, which
Mm-hmm.
you just touched upon. Actually, physician heal thyself is also be self-sufficient, be
Mm-hmm.
be self-reliant, because so much of what I'm wondering we have been duped and tricked and bamboozled into, to use Malcolm's terms, um, is a great propagandic advertising and media campaign convincing us that we need these things, products, services, ideologies, etc. And so self-reliance implores us to look under our own feet, not only for what we need, but also for the answer, again, the answers to all our questions and the solutions to all our problems. So much of this has to do with us being advertised into hell uh, in such a way that we think of all the superfluous things that have been sold to us and that we've bought. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so, for me, it's also that process of decolonization uh,
Mm-hmm.
and entry into self reliance means taking inventory of what you have been sold and what you need to let go of. So much garbage
Mm.
we hold on to that we just need to let go of because some man in a fancy white suit sold it to us. Be that certain religions, be that a host of beauty products and
Mm.
consumeristic, crass materialistic bric-a-brac and kickshaw and all these trinkets and gadgets that do us harm that we don't really need. And so, in short, it comes down also to we need to learn how to simplify, and we need to learn how to take care of our basics: food, clothing, shelter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There
It
is a
becomes, self-reliance versus dependency,
Mm, mm, indeed.
because we are becoming more and more dependent due to the media propaganda, and dependent in terms of being colonized and immersing ourselves in the decadence of this culture. And I'm sure it's not really important, but I'm sure we're going to touch on this whole Netflix controversy. And that's my example. We've immersed ourselves in this kind of decadence and degeneracy,
Yes.
and we have to extricate ourselves from it in order to decolonize our minds, but also in order to heal ourselves from this degeneracy and this
Mm-hmm.
debauchery.
Yes. Yes. I say.
And according to my analysis, a critical first step for us to recover our identity and move the planet in the right direction, we got to recover literacy. If we can recall our ancestors, our descendants of the enslaved who were here in this chapter, they took that away from them, fundamental literacy away from them. I
Yes.
mean, they took layers and layers and layers and layers of it. I mean, we have 5,000 years of literacy. All of these scripts that people write around the world in,
Yes.
many of them are traced back to our own. And so now we're in a situation where we're raising generations that are not as literate as their parents' generation. And that's continued failure. There's a question on the table. I want to bring up Queen Mother Kashiba. I think she brings up a very critical question. I'm teaching this course on game theory, and I put up the link to join to get information on the course. I'm teaching it to give us the ability to solve problems.
I
So
say.
she puts up the question: what does game theory help us to determine what France is doing in Kenya and other parts of Anglophone Africa, for example? Good, good point. Let's game this one out. Are you guys want to see if we can game this one out a little bit? I'll make
Absolutely.
my first point. Number one, France is involved in Kenya because primarily French self-interest. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yes.
Primarily French self-interest. France is involving in Kenya as opposed to Uganda, which is right next door, because Kenya has a weak, dependent governance that has proven itself to be loyal to external forces of recent. Do you agree that William Ruto has kind of sold his people out for Western self-interest?
Yes.
So, primarily, what does France want from Kenya? They want access to one of the youngest populations of any nation in the world.
Hmm.
They want access to Kenya's booming, burgeoning tech sector.
Hmm.
They want access to Kenya's population, which is a large population because France sells pharmaceutical drugs and
Mm.
vaccines and others. So they want that permanent market of the pharmaceutical drugs and vaccines. So if you ask me, I would probably list 10 self-interest points that France wants from Africa, from Kenya specifically, and the other francophone. France wants to keep manipulating their currencies because when France controls your currency, they control your destiny and they make themselves rich off of you. And you know something? I recently came to determine France has no natural resources. England has
Right.
no natural resources.
Barren rock.
So
Right.
they got to have access to those natural resources. Why Kenya? Because Kenya is on the east coast, and the port of Mombasa is one of the most important ports on the African continent insofar as shipping goods and services to India, China, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, etc., to Vietnam now. It's a major
Right.
industrial hub.
Right.
I'm going to kind of cut that analysis. What does France want? Long list of that.
Well, they also want to continue their illusions that they are a prominent and dominant player in the
Hmm.
world, on the world stage.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You pointed out they have no abundance of resources. They have resources, but they want more. They want access to markets. This is the key thing that has driven the Europeans for the past 500-600 years. What markets do they want? Keidi outlined all of them. They want the demographics. They want the consumer market. They want the natural resources. They want access to the ports, which will gain them access to the world.
And with this hantavirus, they also want access to our veins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they also they along with their cohorts also want to depopulate the continent. That's part and part. And it sounds crazy. On one hand, you say, well, we want the consumers, we want the marketing, but on the other hand, to say, well, that doesn't make sense for them to be engaged in genocide. Yes, it does when you understand that they're psychopaths. There's nothing logical or rational about what they do. They just have, as Keidi said, they have self-interest. But they have, along with the other Europeans, have divided the world into various zones. And as far as Africa is concerned, their primary focus is on the natural and mineral resources and the geography so that these places can become tourist attractions for themselves and the few other people that they allow to remain on the planet after they've done their major depopulation. And keep in mind, they think generations ahead, although they're not deep thinkers. I mean, they don't look at the consequences, the moral, ethical, or even the physical consequences of what they do. Because if they did, the world wouldn't be in the shape that it's in now. So all of these things are part and parcel of the game. The game theory, when you look at, and I've never read the whole book, The Art of War, that's a lesson on game theory.
That's an essential text of game theory. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
So he focuses on knowing yourself as well as knowing your adversary.
And
And
also, if you can fight and win a war without any commitment of fire and steel, that means you're a good player.
right. And
The
that
other,
we're seeing that played out with the Chinese right now on the world stage.
Now, also, what I didn't mention was France is pursuing the new scramble for Africa.
yes, and
Well,
that
excuse me, but just want to throw this out there because they're being kicked out of the Sahel. So
exactly,
they have to compensate for that.
That's right. Duara?
exactly. I know I was going to mention the same thing. Is that because they have been kicked out of the Sahel, they have to go now to Anglophone countries to do their groveling and their manipulation and technology. It's the same exact reason why the Roman Catholic Pope went to Africa recently. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the new scramble for Africa, as you so rightly mentioned, Baba Kidi, is not just for resources; it's for access to mines.
Souls. The Pope went there to harvest souls,
Harvest.
raw material to shape them to be global Catholics, to
Exactly.
attempt to preserve their hegemony.
Exactly, and that keeps money rolling in. That keeps believers that are beholden to Italy and Europe. And then the other thing I was going to mention too, and I've got to do more studying. But there was an article that I saw that talked about Europe separating itself from the U.S. and a lot more countries in Europe are on their own. Perhaps because of the tensions within NATO and Trump and NATO and all that. And so I personally think, and this is kind of what the article was alluding to, is that a lot of these European countries are now scrambling to have to be more self sufficient and to go out on their own outside of these alliances and allegiances to try to secure things for themselves. And it's just a mirror reflection, in my personal opinion, of this dog eat dog, hyper competitive Eurasian mentality. I mean, this is not only the new scramble for Africa, but this is another Berlin conference in the minds of Eurasians because they're trying to figure out how they're going to once again carve up the continent in such a way that this article that I have from the Africa Report is entitled Africa and Artificial Intelligence, the Recolonization Nobody is Naming.
Mm,
That's a
I
very
can definitely see that. We do talk about that. Africa's use of AI has to be filtered through primarily what do we Africans need?
yes.
What do we need? Because AI can be just a plaything, a tool, a plaything. It's like a game station. I hear about people now having hours of chat with Chat GPT-4, just chatting with it. Well, that's not going to teach you anything, but during your hour-long chat with GTP4, you are teaching it. It's
Yeah.
a learning language model. So the thing is still accumulating data. Now, Trump goes to China
Mm.
and takes with him, I think, some 28 or so major tech executives from America.
Hmm.
What was that trip about?
It was about a lot of things. The thing that we need to look at is how is it being spun in the media. The spin that we're being bombarded with was a failure on the part of Trump to get anything meaningful other than the agreement about Boeing and purchase of soybeans. Notice, other than Elon Musk, where they showed him sightseeing,
Mm.
you didn't see them uh, the discussions that all those tech people and the BlackRock people, you didn't see the media didn't follow them around, and I'm sure that the meetings that they had were closed door and they were very intense. So
Mm-hmm.
what it was about was a display, a show, theater in terms of China versus America, but on a deeper level, it was about the uh, technology and the attempting to work together to gain access to the Chinese markets, to penetrate the Chinese financial situation, or then partner with them, as well as some other things that you really didn't see unless you subscribe to Financial Times or you're in some of those deep uh, economic uh, investigators and investigations of what's going on. But
Mm-hmm.
on a global level, and I wanted to talk about this on a global level, it was a smackdown. Z smacked Trump down.
While at the same time holding him up so he could smack him again. Because China depends, China needs and depends on that $600 billion trade surplus that they're getting from the U.S. They're getting a lot more from the U.S. than they're prepared to let go of right now. So, yeah, he
Well,
smacked Trump down, but at the same time, China realizes they are holding up the U.S. economy with the purchase of so many Federal Reserve bonds.
but when you look at what's the pattern is that the Chinese have been dumping U.S. treasuries, and they've been dumping them at an accelerating rate the past couple of years. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, when Trump went on his tirades with his currency wars and his trade wars and his tariffs, China, because of their culture, they're not belligerent. They don't offend people. They just made a decision. We're going to go elsewhere. And so that's why Trump went there, to get China to begin to start to buying U.S. soybeans and other agricultural foodstuffs, beef, things like that, because China went elsewhere. And when you look at who their burgeoning trade partners are now, it's that whole group, the Southeast Asian nations. They've increased their trade, their relationship with them, 10, 20-fold. So yes, China wants American access, but at the same time, they're not going to bow down to Trump. Notice what's going on. The Canadians are going to now to import Chinese electric vehicles.
And apparently, one of the agreements they came away with, and we'll have to wait and see if it really does manifest, is that China would invest, I think, $300 billion or so dollars in a U.S. capability to manufacture their EV vehicles here.
Well, but there's, again, you have to see whether or not that was signed. Because one of the things, the people, the research that I've seen, the people who've done the research, there were no real MOU signed.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that most of this stuff was fluff, just like when Trump met Putin in Alaska or wherever it was. Nothing came out of that. And again, when I say Z smacked Trump down, the fact that he mentioned the Thucydides trap was a smack and an insult directed at Trump. Meaning, because if you understand what that is, and I wrote pieces on this years ago, if you understand and understand what that means, is China was telling Trump, we're the top dogs now. So don't get it twisted. Don't mess this up where we have to go from cooperation to contention and conflict. But understand, we're the top dogs now.
And the whole Taiwan issue came into that as well.
Well, but see, what have we learned from the Iran fiasco? Talking about game theory, what have we learned from that?
The main thing I learned from it was asymmetrical situations demand radical and unpredictable solutions. And the other thing that I learned, the importance of the choke point. That was all Iran had to fall back on, was the choke point. And when they choked off the Straits of Hormuz and called a global economic crisis with a cost of energy, they basically played their hand and they apparently won it. Now, we Africans, we have choke points we could do as well, but who knows about them?
Well, the Africans who are sharp, they know about them. No one in their right mind could say that Trump nor the United States, Hegseth, the Pentagon, the CIA did not grasp the leverage that the Iranians had. I mean, I've been studying this stuff for years, and that's one of the first things that they talked about. Right? The other thing that you mentioned, asymmetric. The Iranians learned the lesson. They looked at what was going on. Again, this is pattern recognition. This is classic game theory. You have one group who's on the board, and they're looking around, and they looked at the Americans' history, recent history, from a military standpoint, and said to themselves, we can't compete with a nation that spends a vast majority of its resources on war and military machinery.
And the rebuilding afterwards.
But what we can do is maximize our resources, Strait of Hormuz, our geography, which would minimize any kind of ground situation. They saw what happened in Afghanistan. They saw what happened in Southeast Asia. They saw what happened when the Americans could not break the will of a people. And so they integrated all of that and integrated technology to the point that what they have shown to the world is that the United States empire is a paper tiger.
That's
Hmm.
right.
Right.
And that they have put Trump and Netanyahu put themselves in a vulnerable position to the point where all that propaganda, all that demonizing of Iran and all of that kind of stuff has
Hmm.
blown up in their faces.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Duara, I've been hearing you trying to get in for a while.
Yeah, even Netanyahu recently admitted that they're losing the propaganda, the propaganda component, and that basically the world hates Israel. Which I don't expect anything less from him playing that anti-Semitic quote unquote card, anyways. But
Mm-hmm.
the one thing, or the couple of things that I learned from Iran, just to dovetail off of what you two Babas mentioned, is the importance of the long game
Mm.
and the importance of preparedness. Because
That's right.
the pattern recognition that Baba Junious mentioned is that they said, okay, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We're not going to be fooled again. And as we can see, the interim Iranian government is continuing to reject every single negotiation and plea from the U.S. and Israel. And as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Persian culture is 2,000 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
that culture has demonstrated that part of their game theory is to save the best for last.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. The long game, playing the long game from an African, Pan African centered point of view, playing the long game becomes very, very important. We're going to have to start thinking in our masterminds, in our think tanks, in our academics. We have to start thinking 100 years, 200 years, 250 years, 500 years to the future
Yes.
and start to plan on those realities today. And if we do it right, we're going to ride the great advantages that we have today into even greater leverage for power. Unfortunately, I just don't see where African so called leadership or African governance is capable of making that leap mentally. I personally think they really need the help of those of us who are strategic analysts.
Yes.
I am preparing this book to create more of us as strategic analysts.
That is the echoed notion of Mapanga Marara the Third, Changa Mbiri, otherwise known as his kind of former name, Bishop Joshua Mapanga. If
Mm-hmm.
you Babas are familiar with him, he is saying the same thing, that we need to basically develop critical thinkers,
Mm-hmm.
and from a Pan African mindset, uniting the diaspora with the continent. And, think of the World Economic Forum. Think of this billionaire unelected, these billionaire unelected leaders. We have the same thing, not billionaires in terms of materialistic possessions and wealth per se, but in terms of ancestral treasure, in terms of ancestral memory. We are billionaires. And so I contend that, much like the World Economic Forum, we need to uplift and elevate our own unelected uh, leadership class that would include Arikana Chiambori Kwao, that would include Peter Obi, PLO Lumumba, Mapanga Marara, etc. And by unifying with them, we can create, according to game theory, a dialectical opposite that can serve as a tension point against those in the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Good point you make. We must keep in mind that isn't asymmetrical. We have plenty of intelligence, moralities, ethics, consciousness, and all of that that can work for us. The people you mentioned all carry that with a lot of pride, but our monies are being diverted
Yes.
into non-productive consumerism. And
Hmm.
unless we can divert a much higher percentage of our spending money into productive investments, we're going to continue to be wiped out of civilization, out of competition. Just a mere 5% of the 1.4 or $1.5 billion that the African diaspora has in income. That's not even including our assets. Just a mere 5% of that, we could launch an African strategic smelting fund. I use this particular leverage because everything begins in this new dynamic inside my mind. Everything begins when we stop exporting raw materials and begin to smelt them on the African continent, turning the aluminum into the bauxite into aluminum, aluminum into finished products. Everything begins when we go industrial manufacturing, but it begins with the smelting of our own raw exports.
Exactly. I agree.
We'll see what our challenge is. The statistics that you just shared, and I get a little tired of hearing that stuff because it's basically based on instant gratification.
Mm,
Mm.
Instant gratification versus planning 7 generations,
that's
which
right.
was what Aboriginal indigenous people did. The old saying, you're going to plant trees, you know, whose shade you will not sit under. So we have to move from instant gratification. One of I don't know if it was the professors or your lessons on game theory. He was talking about status. We and E. Franklin Frazier and so many of our people have looked at how we waste so much of our time attempting to compensate and gain status in a
Mm-hmm.
society where we're on the bottom. We're literally on the bottom. And so until
I'm nearly on the bottom, but I'm above you. So
well,
that's their mindset.
but they can only go but so far.
That's right.
Right. So, and what we're going to see with this reconfiguration is a lot of their status is going to be pulled out from under them
That's right.
with the economic collapse that's coming.
That's right.
So, uh, we have to do a better job of informing our people. We have to start younger, go down, drill down deeper, educate them, and encourage them again to know who we are. Look at, you mentioned smelting. You know how much influence Africans had in smelting and iron, not just in Nubia or
Hmm.
Kush, but in Central and West Africa,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
where metallurgy was prime, and that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons they captured us. Who do you think did all those fences and those ornaments in South Carolina and some of these mansions? No, that wasn't the Europeans. That was us.
Right. And yeah, it's funny. You can even find the Dinkra symbols in that ironwork. I
Mm-hmm. That's
speaking of
right.
ancestral memory. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you both.
So we're presented at a crosswords moment, a crossroads, not words, a crossroads moment. And according to the research I put into the book, the timeline, the chronological timeline for Africa has basically 3 stages. From year 1 to year 4, we do establish certain capital funds, one of which is the smelting fund, And then at the same time, not only create that fund, but we are going to assist African legislatures to pass laws demanding that they quit exporting raw materials. Now, some countries have already done this. There's been a boycott against France and I think the United States as well from Mali. We're not going to export, and I think Niger as well, not going to export the uranium ore that you need to power your new future century, and especially the critical timing of that because they're building nuclear plants now for these massive data collection centers, data collection, processing, storing centers. Now, that's a whole nother conversation. Maybe we'll get into that because that goes into this realm of the freaky and Operation Stargate, they're calling it. And but the key about it is they're going to need our access to our raw materials in the form of uranium or to power those mini nuclear plants. China is building, I think, 200 nuclear power stations right now. And so, therefore, that becomes a choke point.
Ashe.
But see, the thing is, we have to be careful of the information that we accept as factual.
Mm.
You know, one of the things is, oh, well, you know, the United States is trying to cut China off and they're trying to do that. Yeah, yes, they are. That's part of their theory. But the
And that's
Chinese,
nothing new.
right. But the Chinese have made their own decisions. Number one, they get criticized because they're one of the few countries that's still dependent on coal. A lot of their energy sources come from coal. In the meantime, between, the old DJs used to say, in the meantime, in between time, until they can get those nuclear reactors up and running, they are finding other ways to augment their energy needs. So what you're seeing is their leadership is clearly engaged in game theory,
That's
clearly
right.
focused on what's best for them. Again, goes back to the old African summum bonum, ma'at ubuntu, the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
That's right.
And until we get back to that point, and until we get to the point where we can prioritize certain aspects. Now, Sahel is doing a great job, and they're under relentless attack for that. But again, we can see the results of that because now France is forced to go other places. And again, they have identified Africa as a zone of mineral and natural resources.
That's right.
Yeah,
And the
Macron.
African Union is doing very little to defend against all of this, Brother Duara.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that Macron. This is crazy. Macron is an article at the Africa Report. It says Macron to Africa, quote, "We are not the predators of the 21st century," end quote. And it's like, talk about double speak. You mentioned cross words. Yeah, that's an example of cross words right there. We're at a crossroads, like John Henry Clark and so many others had foretold. But you know, just playing off of your Freudian slip, if you will, of cross words. You know, these people are so deceptive and demonic in their swindle, in their approach, that they say the exact opposite of what they're really doing. And then there's another quote from Macron too, where he said that France's fate is tied to Africa, to the African continent. And I mean, if that's not just laying it all out right there.
Hey, Duara.
Yes.
Share with our viewers and listeners what advantages France brings to this arrangement, this table.
I can't.
What are the pluses that they bring?
I honestly can't think of any other than, and this is not a plus. This is a negative. Continuing the colonialistic need for, as I mentioned before, hearts, minds, and souls. Filling French colleges with African students instead of African students going to African colleges and universities. And this idea, this marketing ploy that France is a brand that you must buy into. Croissants and berets and
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 cheese.
and cheese and and wine that's filled with sulfates and keychains of a building that they never finished, which is what one comedian said about the Eiffel Tower. He said, "You brought me all the way here to see a building that was never finished. This is just the scaffolding, the framework, and yet it's considered to be one of the greatest achievements of architectural history." This is all a big marketing campaign. And
Mm.
as PLO Lumumba had said recently, the whole notion of divide and conquer through languages, going back to language for a second, is that Anglophone countries must always report back to London. Francophone
Mm.
countries must always report back to their colonial master in Paris. Lusophonian countries must always go back to their colonial master in Lisbon. And we need to break that cycle and divorce ourselves wholly, totally, and finally from them, knowing that, again, we have everything we need right under our own feet.
Mm. Well, if I could quote Denzel Washington, oh, I say it and I say it again. You've been had.
You've
You've
been
been took.
took,
You've been
hoodwinked,
hoodwinked, bamboozled,
bamboozled,
led
run amok.
astray, and run amok.
Indeed.
And that is his statement as he is portraying Malcolm X. Apparently, from my understanding, Malcolm X never put those exact combination of words together. But if anybody else could speak for us in the words of Malcolm X, Denzel Washington has definitely earned our loyalty and respect.
Well, I did have a soundbite of Malcolm, but he didn't say run amok, and some of the other things that Spike Lee wrote into the movie. He did
Yeah,
say you've been took, you've been had, you've been
been hoodwinked.
hoodwinked and bamboozled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Enough respect, enough respect. And that's actually the first thing someone's going to read when they get the new book, Game Theory for Master's Level Study.
Mm.
But the interesting thing is, the sister raised the question and we responded.
Mm-hmm.
And I use Brave, and they have an AI component. So you typed in what advantages does France bring to the France Kenya partnership?
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Everything we said, that's what AI said.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the port. They're going to invest in the import embassy. You
Mm-hmm.
talked about technological exchanges. These are the things that they're bringing from my vantage point. And they also talk about how they are intruding into the um, English, former English colony.
Mm-hmm.
Francophone is coming into an Anglophone, uh, invading an Anglophone territory, former Anglophone territory.
Mhm.
So
Mm-hmm.
clearly, that's part and part of the problem, because when you look at the age of colonialism, they all were engaged in wars. The Dutch, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and the English. So it's,
Mm-hmm.
again, history repeating itself. And if we don't recognize the patterns, we're going to miss it.
That's right. And we'll be left sitting on our hands over in the corner saying, what happened? Why won't they act morally or ethically? Their morality and ethics should be wiped out of our minds as a leverage point, as a bargaining point. Their morality, their ethics mean nothing in the global competition to sustain their empires for the future.
What does the illusion of morality? Because remember, one of the reasons that they acquiesced to the civil rights movement was because in the 50s, beginning in the 40s, but in the 50s, the United States was actively moving to take the baton from the Europeans in terms of global empire.
Mm.
And they knew they were vulnerable in terms of apartheid, American apartheid, racial oppression, economic strangulation. So they had to do something to alleviate that. That's one of the reasons they were always those goodwill tours sending black musicians around the world, Dizzy
Mm-hmm.
Gillespie and all of them, to try to counter what later on the Soviets were saying about the United States.
Mm-hmm. And we recall one of those goodwill tours was Louis Satchmo
Yep.
Armstrong,
Yep.
Yeah.
and accompanying him on that tour was Frank Carlucci, at that time a CIA operative charged with carrying out the assassination of Patrice Lumumba.
Mm.
Well,
Mm.
So,
all of those tours were under the auspices of the State Department.
and the
What
State
does that
Department
tell you?
is the CIA.
Right. What does that tell you?
That's right. So we're going to do better. We're going to do better. Or we're not going to make it at all. We will fade to black. I personally think that that is an existential challenge that's just unthinkable. That's the worst catastrophic outcome that we could imagine. And so, in my mind, if I'm going to be wiped out by the catastrophic collapse of civilization or go down swinging as hard as I possibly can, let me get a couple of punches in before I get knocked out.
Yeah, but you want to swing at the right target. You don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be one of the aspects of game theory is understanding how not just their motives, but how they operate. There's a term called cat's paw when
Mm.
they're dealing with things. So the manipulators use a another term is called a straw man or a cat's paw.
Mm-hmm.
They use someone else to be either the fall guy or the front person
Mm.
who will do the work, but they're the ones manipulating. So, like you said, Carlucci was there as a handler and making sure everything went right on these tours, making sure that the propaganda that these tours was designed to facilitate was done. And so we need to clearly understand and understand how our adversaries work. And again, it gets, like I said, The Art of War is a treatise on game theory.
Mm-hmm. All right. We welcome you, our listening audience. Join us. We did have a lot of people come in and comment at the beginning. We have a fairly good size audience. Um, do the best you can to be active, to be engaging, to be a partner in what we're doing today. The last comment we have that came in was Queen Mother Kashiba's question: what does game theory help us to determine what France is doing in Kenya and other parts of Anglophone Africa, for example? And I'm not saying that France couldn't be bringing something that we Africans could use in the short run, but that's not the long run game. The long run game is we will become independent of the European hegemony over these different areas, and we will develop the autonomous capabilities. We recall that when Japan finally was opened up to the world, to trade, because before Admiral Perry, no one left the shores of Japan alive. The 11 years after the opening up, Japan replicated what was at the time the most important machine on the planet, the steam engine machine. And now we look at China, since China opened up in the early 1980s to Western presence there, and might have been a little bit earlier with Nixon's trip there, but
Well, yeah,
really
the 70s.
it takes a few years for reality to set in that there is a new paradigm shift. But China then created a series of agreements that allowed them to appropriate the technology, and they reverse engineered everything that came across their desk. I can recall when people laughed at Chinese cars because they were imitations of poorly made Russian cars when they first appeared. But I don't think anybody's going to be laughing at the next generation of EV vehicles that is dominating the global market. China has become the world's largest automobile exporter, and it's only inevitable
Well,
this trend is going to keep going.
yeah, but keep in mind that they're close to much like the United. They're close to essentially they're close to the United States. So they're big in Europe and they're big in China, and now thanks to Canada, they're going to be big there.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything came out of that theater, and China can make inroads with its electrical vehicles, I think it's going to be all over for them. It's going to be just like when the Japanese cars came. People laughed at them, remember?
Mm.
Then they learned their lessons, and they saw, okay, what will motivate Americans? So cheap gas, cheaper prices, and then they got into the American thing of style, the
Mm-hmm.
trim, the various trims, and all of that. So
And
once,
then Korea followed that pattern
yep,
to
South
a
Korea,
generation later.
yep. So once, and looking at the Chinese vehicles, they're there already
Mm-hmm.
in terms of style, efficiency, things that come in their packages that don't come in the American in the American EVs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A comment come in from Queen Mother Kashiba. She says, Brother Junious, do not forget to discuss the roast of that black comic. I'm unfamiliar with what she's mentioning.
Yeah, in the overall scheme of things, it's not that important on the world scale, but she is correct. It is gaining a lot of traction. And of course, in our minds, because we've been duped and hoodwinked to focus on sports and entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Netflix special that was recorded. It was a roast of Kevin Hart.
Mm.
So if you look at what's going on in some of these ancillary social media stuff, X and some of these other things, there's a comedian named Tony Hinchcliffe. So he made several jokes, and people are upset about the George Floyd aspect, but I also saw he said something about what's the comedian Underwood? What's her name? Her
Cheryl
husband,
Underwood.
Carol Underwood's husband, who had committed suicide. So
Mm.
he's coming under attack for that. So he said, this is a quote because I was going to talk about this today. The black community is so proud of you, meaning Kevin Hart. Right now, George Floyd is looking up at us, all laughing so hard he can't breathe. And so people took offense to that, and now they're demanding that Netflix apologize. They're demanding that Kevin Hart apologize. They're demanding that Hinchcliffe apologize and or give money to George Floyd's family foundation or whatever. So it's a form of extortion. But the interesting thing is Kevin Hart has refused to apologize. He's defended the comedian. He defended the roast thing, which we got from the Jews, because that's what they did. When you look early on, when they started televising them, and then
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Dean Martin used to make that a part of his TV shows. But this was a staple in just like everything else, the Oscars, the Tonys, you know, it's all the Jews patting themselves on the back, you know, giving themselves awards and what. So the roast was to make fun and eviscerate various personalities, and so we adopted it, and we're into it just like they are, and it's you just push the envelope, and so
Yeah,
somebody like Tony Hinchcliffe can push the envelope, and that becomes part of the cultural debauchery that we're into.
that's right. And of course, it's just comedy. It's just a joke, some
Yeah,
would say.
lighten up. You're too serious. Like, you know, like we can't comment on poor taste. That we have to tolerate that and accept.
Yeah. Well, Queen Mother Kashiba, she writes, Kevin Hart and Chris Rock are both coons. Cooning is back in style. Kevin Hart's getting paid real well to be cooning. Chris Rock ain't doing too bad being a coon. To get smacked one time in a highly televised event
Oh
and the
man.
amount of money he made from Netflix, shoot, smack me.
No, but see, the thing is, that's what they want. That's what they want us to think.
Mm.
Oh, hey, I'll take a punch. I'll take a slap.
Mm-hmm.
From somebody like uh, what's his name?
Will Smith.
Will
Will
Smith.
Smith, right? So we're buying into that. That's what they want. They don't care whether we approve it one way or the other, as long as we buy into it, as long as we make it a focal point, and that becomes part of the culture. So, and that has become part of the culture,
Yeah. Okay. Well,
quote unquote, quote culture and air marks, because that so-called culture is being foisted upon us.
Hmm.
mm-hmm. And that it's being foisted upon us through their consolidation of the media. Now, I think we may have talked about this last week, but the media is now consolidated with the new purchase of Warner Brothers by Paramount. It's being consolidated, or Paramount Skydance is being consolidated now to five houses, five major media houses, these conglomerations. And what makes this last one so dangerous is the Paramount Skydance connection to the state of Israel.
Yeah.
Both father and son, David, Larry Ellison, and his son, David Ellison, who is now in charge of Paramount, Warner Brothers, Skydance,
Hmm.
are ardent supporters of Israel. They finance Israeli military. They've been given millions of dollars donations, etc. They are Zionists to the core. And from my perspective, maybe Baba Juniors, you may want to share an opinion on this. Zionism is fundamentally at war with Pan Africanism.
Yeah, in fact, Amos Wilson wrote a book about Garvey versus Zionism, and you're absolutely right. But keep in mind, when you understand, when we grasp pattern recognition, what is Warner Brothers? Who were the Warner Brothers?
Mm-hmm.
Metro Goldwyn Mayer.
Yeah.
They
And it's
were again an empire of their own. Read that book. It
Mm-hmm.
talks
Neil
about the
Gabler's book.
creation of Hollywood. And Hollywood was much more than just motion pictures. You're talking about business, you're talking about finance, you're talking about organized crime, because that's
And the esoteric and the occult.
yes,
Hollywood was the magic baton that Merlin the magician used to weave his spells in their mythical lore.
right. So we're looking at a continuation. The goal, remember, for the New World Order, when you look at the upper echelons, is for them to control, them being the overlords Many of them are Zionists. Many of them are Ashkenazim. Many of them are some of the former royalties who have mixed blood in them. Then you include the Rockefellers, the Oppenheimers, the Rothschilds, and all that group.
Hmm.
Their goal is to own everything,
Mm-hmm.
literally everything. And notice how the Justice Department is just standing back and allowing this to go down. That's a monopoly,
That's right.
basically.
That's right. Um, did you get a chance, either of you get a chance to see the material that I put up this week asking about or looking deeply into the background of the AI development community, the AI's connection to the occult?
I have
You
no,
told
I
me
did
about
not.
it.
I'm going to show you a tiny little shrivel of a piece of information that I put up this week. I'm going to share this graphic right now on my screen. I think you should be able to see it. Do you see
Yes,
the graphic there?
yes.
And here's what it has to say: a ghost in the machine. Asking this question, this was brought up by Professor Jang. He is a game theory professor, teacher, and we've talked about him before. He's teaching on YouTube. He says a AI divinity is a human projection onto opaque systems. Now, in the beginning of AI, it was supposed to be an altruistic contribution to the forwarding of humanity. But that quickly took a different turn when they saw themselves as harbingers of a new kind of civilization development. So, AI divinity is a human projection onto opaque screens. Number one, the black box divinity. Opaque, powerful systems interpreted via ritual, prophecy, and hidden knowledge. Second panel, Stargate infrastructure. Now, this is actually Stargate is the name of the program to create these huge data centers for collecting data on everyone on the planet. So, Stargate infrastructure versus interdimensional. The $500 billion Stargate AI project, modern projected conflated with historical programming fueling myths of portals and demons. Now, this talks about the 1970s psychic program called Operation Stargate, conducted by the CIA. And we do see later the media collaborating, cooperating with that as well in bringing us that whole Stargate movie series. Then it's the occult history of technology. And so we can see these modern tech is developing itself on the backbone of the esoteric roots. For example given in my book, I write a chapter on or it's actually an appendix, on the 20th century reality of John Whitesides Parsons. Please look his name up. John Whitesides Parsons. He's actually has a statue at Jet Propulsion Laboratory because he's the one who came up with the technology or the development of solid rocket fuel boosters, the same ones they strap on the outside of the shuttle and lift it up into space. That's John Whitesides Parsons. And he was a son of someone in the Woodrow Wilson administration. But John Whitesides Parsons also was said to conjure the Antichrist or the devil up, a demon, in a Kabbalistic ritual. And I talked about that in my book, Secret Societies, no, Conspiracies and High Crimes, in the chapter on secret societies and ceremonial magic. But, but it's all based upon pilfered African sacred cosmology. So pattern matching versus omniscience, God-like descriptions versus reality. So in essence, what they are doing, I theorize in the book, and Professor Jang is the source of my information, they are creating an idol for destructions. And many critics have warned that AI is a messianic ideology, distracting from real ethical issues and human autonomy, and that eventually this thing they call AGI, this difference between AI and AGI, AGI has not been released yet. They're expecting to put AGI into enforcement in 2027. But one tech executive, and I mentioned his name, he says, we're going to be building these huge data centers, but we're not going to release it until we have our bunkers complete. Now that gives a whole nother idea of what Trump is building under the East Wing ballroom of the White House. Many people have exposed the fact that it is a huge survival bunker.
If if I could highlight some of the things you mentioned and just bring a little bit of context to our family. One, we know that there is this thing called scientism, and that is the religion of both technocracy and transhumanism. That's
Mm-hmm.
making Eurasian science the new religion.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a God complex there. We can also go to Ray Kurzweil, one of
Mm-hmm.
the early Google life extensionist technologists, for lack of a better term. He was asked in an interview, do you believe in God? His answer was, not yet. We haven't created him yet.
Mm.
I did some research on Ray Kurzweil, and I'm just gonna keep it simple and plain. Eurasians, they abhor pain and suffering. Uh, Ideally, there's a profound weakness there. There's an aversion to pain. There's an aversion to death. And when I did the research into how Ray Kurzweil got into life extension technology and searching for immortality and all these things at Google, it dawned on me that his whole journey was spawned by losing his grandpappy. No one,
Mm.
no one, and I'm being facetious here. My point is that because of the despiritualized nature of many of these Eurasians, they think that death is some sort of an accident that they need to cure. And as a matter of fact, Google's subsidiary, Calico, their main aim is to do exactly that, to solve this conundrum or this problem of death. So it's all pain aversion, in my opinion. But Africans, as Africans, we understand very clearly pain is a part of life. And in order to really gain, you need to go through the bitter in order to get to the sweet. So that's just a little aside about Ray Kurzweil. Then you have, I have an article here, which I wanted to quickly mention. It's titled Silicon Valley Elites Push AI Transhumanist Agenda to Merge Human Brains with Machines. And they're talking about these BCIs, these brain computer interfaces,
Interface, yeah.
Neuralink, Synchron, etc. And so, just real quick, under this one heading, Silicon Valley's vision for humanity's future, some tech elites are no longer hiding their belief that the future of humanity depends on merging with AI. D. Scott Phoenix, one of these transhumanists, he warned that humans who refuse integration with a brain computer interface and AI could ultimately be left behind by a super intelligent, quote unquote, God brain. Either we get on the train or we are left behind in a way that's profoundly bad for us, he said. I don't think we're going to be able to control a God brain. And then it goes into Peter Thiel talking about the immortal body. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context to what you, again, so eloquently laid out in visual form for us, Baba Keidi, that this is what they're pushing as the new religion. Science,
Mm-hmm.
technocracy, transhumanism, AI, artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, we have ancestral intelligence or African intelligence. And this whole notion that they are God and that they are the ones that have to usher in innovation and technology in order to save all of us. I call complete male bovine excrement on that.
BS. Wow.
Well,
So,
well, what we're looking at is a modern reiteration and the playing out of the Asaurian drama.
mm-hmm.
So these people, they're the Seths or Seth. The Christians will call them Lucifer, the Luciferians. When we look at secret societies, they're using occult symbols, rituals, demonic integration, blood sacrifices, sexual deviation,
Mm.
and all of that is part of their mindset. Now, keep in mind what Duara is talking about is not intended for everybody, because part and parcel of their plan is to do away with or eliminate billions of people. There are 9 billion people on this planet. They're talking about eliminating 5 billion people.
Mm.
And if you don't think that this is happening right now, one of the things
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about was Canada's assisted suicide program
Yes. Yes.
is now targeting the infirm, the mentally ill. What's that but eugenics?
Yeah.
That is.
Modern day eugenics. And I believe, and I needed to double check, but I believe Australia also has a similar program. So it's breaking out into Five Eyes being Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, the Anglophiles. And so that's part and parcel of their plan. And also Ray Griswold, they want to live forever. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's, when look at, if you, I turn it over to Duara and he can share Ray Griswold's regimen, what he does every day to try to ensure that he's going to live. And this is in addition to his, what do they call it? Where you go into the
Cryogenic chamber.
cryogenic stuff. So all of this, we laughed. We think it's science fiction. Ha ha ha. That's not true. Yes, it is.
And Yuval Harari, the underling minion demon, in my words, of Klaus Schwab, the sexual deviant who was basically ousted out of the World Economic Forum because of sexual harassment and racist comments. Yuval Harari said that AI would control religion and that only the billionaire class would be able to achieve immortality. Everyone else, he said, would die.
Mm.
So, see, one of our problems, because we've been so bamboozled, we don't think that this level of evil and wickedness exists.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And what the media has done is made it so that, okay, they will admit that it exists and it is functioning, but they give it the okay, that it's all right. Because when AI show you how rapid this thing is moving, as much as even be prior to the pandemic, they were talking about artificial intelligence, and they had several committees on ethics about it. My response to that is, oh, well, it's over. Anytime white people talk about ethics,
Right.
that's non-existent. That's a non-factor. So it's all over.
Mm-hmm. We are tasked with bringing our people through all of this chaos to a better place. We do the best we can to put realistic solutions on the table. Unfortunately, far too few of the people will participate. Um, just a tiny little percentage of people will even say hello in passing as we create this forum. How can we do a better job of convincing people to disengage? Such as, we know that religion has done a number on us since 1619 since coming to the United States, and that's just kind of an arbitrary figure if you ask me. But that's a point people can refer to. Religion was used to create a colonizing mindset, and first it was done violently before we bought into it.
Right.
They used the religious justification to say to their own people, if they won't comply, kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And they saying that today to the Israelis, or saying that about the Palestinians. If Hamas won't comply, kill them all, take their land, and build what you intend to build out of it. So, unless and until we can begin to divorce ourselves from their lack of morals, lack of ethics, and that ahistorical view of what religion has done, we're going to be bringing in an iron weight tied around our ankles or strapped to our back as we attempt to swim home to freedom. And that's not going to work. As soon as we hit that water, we're going to sink and drown. But then the mythology of their religion says, no, I will teach you to walk on water. But even then, if we're talking about walking on water, the religious leaders in our community, they're not telling us what that really means. Walk on water, in my opinion, means go the way of Pisces, incorporate Pisces into your cosmology, and therefore walk in the way of righteousness. Water is healing. Water is the feminine intuitive. Water is so much nurturing. We cannot have life without water. So walk on water, from my mind, it means an ancient cosmology.
I would also add, Baba Junious always brings up the Heruem Aket, which the Greeks misnomered the Sphinx. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the archaeological evidence, I think John Anthony West or somebody was proving that there was water once around the Sphinx. I contend also to dovetail off of your point, because as Africans, we always deal with duality. The other
Mm-hmm.
side to that is that water is emotion, and to walk on water is
Mm-hmm.
to be above your emotions. And if the Heruim Akhet, the lion's body, was wading in a pool of water, which again I'm theorizing symbolizes emotionalism, then that Heruim Akhet, that human head coming out of the subdued lion's body, which is resting on the water, that is again walking on water in and of itself as well. And I think there's even a Kemetic passage, it might have been from Amenemope, that mentions walking on water. I'll have to look that up, but one of our elder scholars, Ashra Kwesi, um, and Tony Browder, I think they had pinpointed that. Chike Akua as well mentioned a passage from ancient Kemet about walking on water.
Mm-hmm.
Also, water also symbolizes your deep consciousness,
Yes.
and to walk on it as opposed to being submerged in it.
Mm.
It's good to be submerged in it, meaning that you're part of it, but to go forward in victory in life, you have to come above that, because
Mm-hmm.
you have to, coming above means you're dealing on the material plane.
Mm-hmm.
So this you're using the consciousness to get where you're going in the material world.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because it reminds me, there's a book by Mabel Collins called Light on the Path. And in it, she said, before the eyes can truly see, they must be incapable of tears. And I'm thinking, well, tears is water. So again, that's another indication of that, being connected to one's heart, the emotions, but rising above it to the point where you're not blinded by the emotions.
I say.
And
So,
also the thing with the Asarian drama, and there are many variations of it, various explanations of it, but in no explanation that I've seen does Set get killed. Does Haru kill his uncle? He's
mm-hmm.
always put in check.
Right, right, subdued.
And this is the story is letting us know that your ego must be put in check, and put in check by the hero, the one whose life mission is to be the righteous ruler,
Yes.
who gets support from the Netchers, from Tahuti and all the other ones, to carry on his father's mission of being a righteous leader. So
Mm-hmm.
we need our ego. It just has to be in check.
That's right. And another very important lesson that I took from the Asarian myth is the role of the feminine principle. We could call that feminine principle water. We could call it the great mother goddess and intuition, etc. But
Hmm.
it was Osset that set upon the task of reassembling the dismembered body of her husband, Osar, assembling all those body parts and put it together and resurrecting him, giving him life through the act of bringing him a child. Now, this is mythology, etc., but there are critical lessons inside of there for us to understand that unless and until we can rescue our sisterhood from the grips of a terminal Christianity, this Western Christianity, we're not going to make it.
Well,
Well,
the other thing too is there's some versions where she's assisted by her sister.
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes, Nebuchadnezzar. And this, I'm gonna try not to be crude. Yet I feel like it needs to be said. Part of the resurrecting of that divine feminine, Baba Keidi, that divine sisterhood, is to undo what I think is taking place in that instead of Osset fashioning the Ben stone, which was the only piece that was not able to be recovered by her in her remembering, her
Mm-hmm.
memory of Asor. I believe it was a tilapia fish or a catfish that ate Asor's penis. And so she had to fashion a mini obelisk, a Ben stone, in order to resurrect him. But now I contend that so much has been done to degenerate and deviate us, that now that Ben stone is being fashioned for self use, if you
Mm.
understand what I'm saying, by
I do
Offset,
understand it. Mm-hmm.
instead of using it to bolster and resurrect the African man.
Mm. Very well stated. Very well stated. We have about another 7 minutes or so before we're going to begin to wrap up today's program. We've talked a lot about esoteric things. Can we put some practical solutions that people can work on between here and next week? I'm always going to mention health as a primary solution. Health is wealth. So let's begin to recover our wealth by very definitely recovering our health.
Well,
Ashe.
again, getting back to African cosmology, that's universal across the continent. To dovetail on what you just said, health and wealth, you're talking about vitality, vitalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the people were keen as they watched their leader, whether he was a chief, an elder, or the so-called pharaoh. When they saw a decline, they became concerned that his vital life force was in a diminishing state. And so there were rituals, and in some cases, actual murder of the chief or the king because he was in decline. But most of the time, it was a ritualistic or symbolic exchange because they understood how important it is for the clan, the tribe, the nation to have vital leadership, meaning mentally, meaning spiritually, because he was they connect the conduit to the ancestral realm and the spirits, and also to have the type of strength and the vim and vigor to perform his duties or her duties. And so again, we have to get back to that because we've been duped and bamboozled to accept this. Now it's like, hey, take the shot, take the pill,
Yeah.
be fat, and look at how we are being depicted on its art replicating reality. Most black people in America today are overweight, some bordering on morbidly obese. So this is not shaming anybody. It's talking about, oh, let's take a look at ourselves and get back in right relationship.
What you're talking about, Baba Junious, is the normalization of hedonism and the pathologizing of discipline. Take
Mm-hmm.
the easy way out, instant gratification, like what was mentioned earlier. But that's the sure way of self-destruction. And so, have our minds been so eroded that we can't even understand logically that taking the easy way out is only going to weaken us further?
Mm.
But we live in you asked that question. That's a crucial question. But stop and think about it. We live in a illogical, irrational, and psychopathic society. A
It's
Absolutely.
cacistocracy.
intended to cause
Uh,
mass chaos.
Yeah,
yes,
a
yes.
cacistocracy, which is
Ashe.
ruled by the most depraved, venal, wicked amongst us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Ashe.
I'm reminded in the book I have a chapter on King Pharaoh Ramses II, Pharaoh Ramses the Great, and it said that Ramses also used the Heb-Sed royal jubilees to
Mm.
manifest his divinity. Traditionally held after 30 years of rule and every 3 years thereafter, to rejuvenate the king's potency, Ramses celebrated an unprecedented 13 to 14 of these Heb-Sed festivals. And in the Heb-Sed festival, it was largely ritual, but the pharaoh would run around the perimeter of, I think it was one of the pyramids, and that would prove that he was still in good shape and able to lead his people. I think we all could use some version of Heb said. I know I have my version of it, but I think many, many more of us need to understand this sense of the ruler's vitality is very important to the whole health of our people.
And that is why when you look at many of those statues, they're gripping a rod, a small rod that is barely visible except for on the circular part of the hand grasping it. You can see the rod sticking out a little bit, and that is so their muscles are flexing. That's to show that vitality, that vigor, that strength. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. We need to incorporate that in order to. We need Bob ancestor now. Kamal Kamban said we need healthy warriors. We can't have
Mm-hmm.
sick warriors.
That's right.
Right. And also, they always had an ankh in their hand.
Yes,
That's right.
The
I
ankh
should.
is not just eternal life; it's vitality.
Hmm.
That's right. We're going to begin to wrap it up. Any final thoughts you want to put on the table for today? Anything we didn't get a chance to bring up?
You know, in all the doom and gloom that seems to be placed in front of us, which is part of the psyop, we need to realize that that hopelessness, helplessness that we talk about each week. But countering that, I saw a very promising interview on Redacted, where I don't know if you Babas are familiar with Derek Bros. I've featured his Pyramids of Power 17-part documentary series several times on during the mastermind. I've put the link up and stuff like that. But this is a young brother. I think he's of Mexican cultural origin. This is a young brother who is very solutions oriented. He's written several books. He actually writes for the Last American Vagabond. And I would put him up there with Whitney Webb and several other young researchers that are really doing their part to expose transhumanism, aka eugenics, and technocracy. But he did a fascinating and wonderful interview on Redacted, and he offered what I would say is very much akin to the black print of Kuji Chagalia villages. This homesteading movement is a grand solution to what so many of us are warning against and are preparing for. So I offer that as a positive, solution-oriented, motivational, inspirational piece, so that we can begin to see what some of the solutions are. But I was very impressed by the interview, and I would urge everyone to check it out.
Mm-hmm. All right, Derek Bros, Pyramid of Power. And there's a 17-part documentary series. That's very, very good. I'm going to look that up a little bit later today. I will be, of course, still continuing to edit on the book. I was up till very, very early this morning and working on it. And then I woke up and realized I woke up and realized I had forgotten to index my chapter on the construction of a new Rwanda. And so I had to go back into the book. The chapter is entitled Game Strategy for a Real Wakanda, not Rwanda, Wakanda, Wakanda. And I think that the book, I think it's going to be really well received by people who still read.
Ashe.
And I'm going to do everything I can to get this book out. I would love to be selling more pre-sale versions. I'm going to be shipping the book probably by Wednesday or Thursday. I expect to be shipping it from the printer directly to people. And we're just doing the best we can. It's not going to be easy. What we are up against as African people is not going to be easy, but doggone it, I'm going to enjoy this fight. And this will be, I think, my 66th book. I can't remember. The last three or four came out so fast, I've kind of lost count. I think it's book number 66, of which about four of them are out of print, and I'm not interested in going back and reproducing them. But we do the best that we can do.
Ashe. No, that's quite impressive. You'll be proud to know that I'm going to be spending the rest of my day writing as well. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, looking forward to sending some stuff your way soon.
Yeah, because you have the Ubuntu chapter coming up in the book Ubuntu. Am I correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I am
Yeah.
fine tuning that, and a lot of references. So it's a little bit tedious, but we're making it happen.
Are you using footnoting?
I am. That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, great, great. All right. So until next week, what did you want to close up with anything, Baba Juniors?
No, I just want. I saw something. Tulsi Gabbard, who's the head of the intelligence community, is supposedly investigating secret U.S. biolabs in 30 countries. There's 120 in all, and make the linkage between that and this Ebola, as well as the hantavirus.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, they're going to continue this. This is going to be part and parcel of their pattern to make us afraid, and also to usher in vaccine mandates.
Mm-hmm. Did she mention which countries those biolabs are in? Could it be
Well,
Kenya be one of them?
the only one that they mentioned was Ukraine that I saw.
Mm. Yeah.
So, but um, if it's out there, our viewers and listeners can do their own research and dig a little deeper.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Um, Duara, did you get everything in that you wanted to talk about today?
Yes, I did. There was well, that can wait till next week. So yes, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are tasked with moving this mass of people. I think that the mastermind is a wonderful contribution to the forward progress of our people. I am biased, obviously, but I don't know. I don't get a chance to tune in to too many locations where people are doing this. There are definitely them that do this research, and we have to show our appreciation of them. I like Panagenus TV Genius. I think it's Panagenus. I like them. I attempted to contact them to be able to collaborate, cooperate with them, but I never did hear back from them. And I do really appreciate what they do. I am working with a group, just started working with a group of young people in an African country that has got me really, really excited. And I'll have more to reveal a little bit later. They're creating a new communication platform, and they want me to inaugurate it with a series of 12 lectures and commentaries, etc. And then they're going to turn that into a much larger media system. I'm also very excited what our brother Meredith is doing around the continent, and he has extended the invitation to me to come along with him as well. So we're constantly putting coal in the flames in the fire and
Hmm.
hoping that this is going to cause an explosion. But I tell you, what I do need is more cooperation, collaboration with my diaspora brothers and sisters here in the US, UK, across the CARICOM Basin, North, Central, South America, all around the diasporan world. We have to step up, collaborate, cooperate with each other, and bring to Africa what Africa needs for sovereign and sustainable development. Hey, that's my last word for today.
Shay.
So, unless we have anything else to share, I want to thank everyone for being in today's conversation, for bringing what you do bring to it. You bring wonderful energy, inquiries, some of the things that you remember to talk for us to talk about is very, very good. So, ashe, ashe, ashe yo. I thank you all for being a part of what we do here on LIB Radio. We are live and direct every Sunday at 12 noon Eastern Time. It's 9 a.m. Pacific Time and 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time, 5 p.m. BST, and that is 8 p.m. East African Time. We love you, we appreciate you, and we are reflecting our best in you. Ashe, ashe, ashe yo. Peace and prosperity to you two brothers. Enough respect.
Peace.